And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 193. Today we're going to be looking at the Shadows Challenge. A few weeks ago I talked about the notion of shadows in photography and set a wee challenge. We've had about 9 or 10 people submit their images, so we're going to be looking through them and sort of seeing what other people have done, and hopefully it will give you a little bit of inspiration for what you could do for yourself. So stick around. So yes, welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, here live on YouTube, unless you happen to be watching the catch-up. We have 192 other episodes all sitting here on the YouTube channel, so you can always go and check those out as well. So if you do happen to be watching live, leave a comment, let me know where you are, let me know what the weather's doing. All that kind of thing. If you don't happen to be watching live, you can still leave a comment, just it gets put in the bit below rather than in the constant chat. Obviously I won't be able to respond to it live, but YouTube does tend to let me know when a comment has been left. So if there is anything in this program that you kind of feel you'd like to comment on, or you have a question about, then do leave a comment. Of course, don't forget to like the video as well, and subscribe if you haven't done it as either. I see we've got a few people in already. Susan says, hi from a rather cloudy Kakubri, but the birds are singing their heads off outside my window, so all's well. Well, Kakubri is just down the road from Castle Douglas, and it is overcast, grey, and it was threatening to rain all morning, and now the rain has finally started. It's a bit dreich out there for sure. April says, greetings from a cloudy and cool Long Island, New York. The weather has been like a seesaw, she says. Robert Schaefer from Dallas says, good morning from a soggy Dallas. Another 2.5 inches of rain last night. That's a fair chunk. John says, good day all. Here in Ohio, we are overcast with a bit of rain, but it was a good week. Well, always nice to see a bit of sunshine. Andy says, greetings from Hertfordshire. Well, Nadia says, hi from a cloudy Fife. April says, Robert. Okay. Oh, and other Robert from Texas says, happy... Oh, now I'm going to get the pronunciation of this. Is that Cinco de Mayo? Cinco de Mayo? From a rainy Texas. Okay, C-I-N-C-O. I don't know. Is that a Cinco or a Chinko? Anyway. I don't know. Happy one to you too. Janet says, hello from an overcast Dodderich, Ontario, on Lake Huron. Probably murdering the pronunciation of all these places. Robert says it's pronounced Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo. Right, okay. Well, a happy Cinco de Mayo to you too. Right, okay, well, so we have people in, we have pictures to look at, we have feedback to give. So, let's make a little start. Let me see what I can find here. Actually, just a little bit of introduction, first of all. So 3 weeks ago, I set the Shadows Challenge. So if you haven't seen it, go back to episode 191, where I give quite a bit of talk about the use of shadows in photography. Shadows are one of those really kind of interesting aspects of light. I mean, we talk about photography as painting with light. I've talked about the notion of photography as painting with shadows. But the point of a shadow, sometimes it's about, it's like if you look at me now, look at this screen here, I've got a little yellow patch of light hitting the edge of my forehead from a light up there. I've got light coming in from my right, would be your left as you're looking at me, which is partly coming from the window, but because it's so dull, I've also got another light off over that way as well. And that light is then casting a shadow. You can see the shadow of the little mannequin there. You can see a shadow of me on the wall behind here. So there's sort of, lighter, darker patches on my face, depending on which side where the light is mostly falling. The idea with the shadow photography, as we were talking about it, though, was to make a feature of the shadow where maybe you don't even see what's casting the shadow, or maybe you do, or maybe the shadow is slightly different to what you're expecting it to be, given the object that you're seeing. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can play around with shadows. And as photographers, as people who are playing with light, as people who are trying to capture interesting images, understanding and using and playing with shadows is a real extra tool in your toolbox to create and discover and find interesting images. So that's what the Shadows Challenge was all about. All these challenges that I set you are there for you to go out and try doing something, because if you're interested in improving your photography, improving your understanding of photography, then to actually get out and do these things is going to help you along your path. So let's, with all that in mind, let's make a start. So, I'll tell you what, before we even get to that, Meg's joined us as well. It says, hello, everyone. Smug Points, yes. So we're into May. We did the accumulation of the Smug Points for April, and Andy was our winner. Andy was our winner for April's Smug Points with a grand total of 85 Smug Points, and that helped because beginning of last month was the self-portrait challenge, for which I was handing out double Smug Points. So Andy, clear winner there. Runner-up was Meg with 75 Smug Points and Viji with 55 Smug Points, and Jack just kind of tailing in at the back there with 45 Smug Points. But anyway, Andy was our Smug Points winner. So what that means is Andy has got to choose, Andy's allowed to choose the next challenge. And I'm going to chat a little bit about that towards the end of the podcast, so stick around, or if you have to leave early, come back and check it out afterwards. Right, okay, a couple of people saying congrats to Andy and that they liked his self-portrait. That's right, so let's come on to the shadows then. So here we are then, back to shadows, and the idea with the shadows is, let's make a start. So where will I start here? I think let's start with Andy actually, because Andy managed to get his one in first a good couple of weeks ago, because basically, let's switch that over to here. So this is Andy's shadow picture. He says, okay, so he's being a little eager, but he knew he wanted to get it done because he wasn't going to have time to do it closer. So although we've had 3 weeks to do this, Andy got this one in the first week. And he's calling this one Murder Mystery Writer. So nice bit of fun here, and basically what he's done is he's played with the shadow and done a kind of combination photo. So what we've got here is we've got the young man here sitting at a typewriter, a bunch of books sitting around from Passage to India, Truman Capote. We need to rotate the see what they all are. Lots of books, glass of wine or water. Typewriter and the pen, the writer, but in that way the pen is mightier than the sword, or is it? The shadow is holding up the knife. So fun idea there, I think, and a kind of nice textured background there, a little bit of shadow running up, a kind of curve of shadow up onto the wall, creates this kind of nice, really moody feel to it. Fun narrative, whole sense of something going on. I like the way our young man is looking straight at us, the viewer. In fact, actually, that makes quite an interesting, just a little crop on its own, even just with that part. Nice one, Andy. I really like what you've done there. And it's a good start to the shadows challenge. It just kind of shows you that you don't necessarily have to have the same shadow as the thing that's being cast. If you a little bit of Photoshop wizardry, and you can kind of change and swap things about. So, thank you for sending that one in, Andy. April says, so cool. Susan says, oh, creepy, Andy, very clever. And Robert Schaefer says, nice shot. Right, okay. Next, then, up. I almost missed this one, to be honest. Where are we? Not that one. Where do we go? Here. John. So, John from Ohio sent us this one and said, from a walk downtown. Now, I will say that normally Facebook lets me know when somebody's posted an image. John didn't post this one in the Facebook group, but actually posted it onto the event page. So the event page I set up in Facebook about the Shadows Challenge, John posted into that. Now, I've had people posted into there before, and previously I've even encouraged people to post their images in there, but for some reason Facebook didn't let me know. So it wasn't until this morning that I just happened to I just had a sudden thought, maybe I ought to check in case anybody's posted, and I discovered this one from John. We actually posted it there 3 days ago, so I thought better to include it. But for future reference, just in case anyone's worried, if you're going to put in an image for the challenge, either email it to me, kim@kimayres.co.uk, or put it into the Facebook group if you're part of the Facebook group, and then I'm less likely to accidentally miss it. Anyway, but this is fine. This is so this one from John then. So John just says, a walk downtown. So right, this is one of those kind of nicely observant ones where you're kind of out for your walk, you notice something, you capture it, you turn, you take your photo. In that way, we were talking before about the notion of like filling the frame. We're not seeing anything else other than steps, railings, shadow. And that kind of keeps it nicely contained. We like it's a nice idea, the fact that we've got the straight railings here, and we can see, but the shadow that's being cast is being warped by the steps, by the surface and what have you. The only thing I would say about this one, John, is the fact that it's sort of sitting at an angle. Now, obviously, depending on the angle you're at, the horizontal of the steps might change, but what we're noticing here, or what I'm noticing, is the fact that the verticals are tilted. So the whole thing feels just slightly off. And I think generally speaking, the thing to do always, first thing with your photo is make sure either the horizon is straight, or if the horizon isn't there, make sure a key vertical is straight. So I will just adjust that. You can see here there's a line running down. And just doing something as simple as that automatically, I think, makes it a slightly better one to do. Works better. And then maybe I would just tidy that up. Just take out that little last of the bottom line there, just to kind of possibly that edge there. Just take that so there's a little bit more edge, something like that. And then I think it feels more contained. I quite like the way then. So we've got the railings here are held by strong verticals. We know it's that way up, and then that allows for that real zigzag of the shadow as well. So it is one of these things. I will just sort of do a quick detour tangent here about the notion of straightening your horizon, or if there isn't an obvious horizon, making sure that the key verticals are straight. So if you've got a building, for example, that it's not tilted to one side, that it is upright. If you've got railings, that they are upright. Anything that should be upright, if it's not there, if it's just slightly off. Now, it's one thing if you've done a deliberate tilt whereby it's quite certain, you've gone beyond 30 degrees, you are deliberately going for a tilt. But if your tilt is sort of less than 5 degrees, less than 10 degrees, generally speaking, unless there's a very, very, very good reason, it just looks like you haven't straightened it. It's not artistic. And a tilt of 30 degrees or more looks like it's been deliberately done. A tilt of 10 degrees or less looks like it's accidental and you haven't paid attention to it. And as a photographer, whether amateur, professional, enthusiast, trying to improve your photography, trying to improve the reaction to your photography, which is basically what most of us want. Is we want, if we're in things like PhotoCrowd or ViewBug, Guru Shots, any of these things where we're putting images in for getting judged, our photos will be judged better if our horizons are straight or our verticals are straight, and there's a proper balance. It doesn't feel like it's just slightly tilted. There's a challenge at the moment, a contest in PhotoCrowd, which I'm currently running, called At the Edge of Town. It's past submission time, but we're into the judging process. And there's been something like about 1,600 photos put in. And the number of ones that haven't even made a merit because of just, it hasn't been straight. It's just somebody gone click and they haven't taken the time just to straighten the horizon. I don't think it's about me being OCD about this, although sometimes it can be a little bit, but it's about that notion of the little detail in the profession. If you're trying to come across that, what you're doing, then these little details, it's just that notion of straightening your crop is one of the first things to do. So I've gone off on quite a tangent. It's not one big moan at you personally, John. It's a thing about that notion that all photographers should be aware of. In this case, as you can see from this, I think it ends up slightly better as if you've just done that. But that being said, once that has been straightened, I think it's a nice photo. It's a good one there, John. And I like that observational bit. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that later on. I'll come back to that notion of observational photography and exercises you can do as well. But yes, you're out and about, you notice something, whether you've got your camera with you or your phone, and you got it. In this case, you're getting the shadows and you're getting those lovely lines. So nicely observed there, John. Right, okay, let's close that. Well, Susan says, great zigzags leading right up to the top of the image. April says, sharp zigzag lines. John says, good point. Meg says, absolutely spectacular idea to put black steps in the photo. I mean, the shadows on the photo, yeah. Okay. Right, next up then, I'm going to go to Susan from Kakubri. And this one really caught my eye. So, Susan says, attached is my image for Shadows Challenge entitled On the Edge. Firstly, I admit to this not being my own idea. I stole it from PhotoCrowd. Well, that's fine. First of all, just on that point alone, that's okay. If you see somebody else doing a kind of image that you think I'd like to have a go at doing that, then have a go at doing that. There's very little that really is truly original in photography and art. What happens is you put your spin on it. You do your interpretation of it. And that's okay. I think there's something good about that, because if you've got something that you're aiming for, then you're learning in the process. Anyway, she goes on. However, the concept of an optical illusion appealed to me, and I thought I would have a go at recreating it. It also appealed to my minimalistic mind. My original image is in colour, but I prefer the black and white version, as I think the shadow of the egg stands out better. Well, I haven't seen the colour version, but yes, I can imagine something like this is it's bold geometrical shapes. You know, hard straight corner lines, round egg, and then round shadow. And I think if you were doing a colour version of this, it would work best with block colour. You know, you would essentially, whether the egg was white or brown, but you would want a single flat surface colour for the top and a single flat surface colour for the underneath as well. And then everything else in sort of black, harsh contrast, I think. So yeah, a colour version would work. You'd want to have that block for the same reason. But yes, so black and white though, I really like this. It says, I was taken beside a window with the added help of a torch to produce a shadow where I wanted it to be, and also to make the shadow sharper. Well, this is true. I mean, if you've got, like today I've got window light, but because it's my hard shadow that's appearing on the wall is coming from the other light that I've got, because the window light is too dark. But generally speaking, window light, unless you've got direct sunlight on it, is going to give you a very diffuse shadow. So if you want a hard shadow like this, you need either direct sunlight, or you need something like a torch or a flash, something with a small light compared to what you're shooting for, so that, and very directional. That will then give you the hard shadow you need. I've also cropped this image, which hopefully makes the diagonals more symmetrical and places the egg on the third. So excellent. Like I said, I really like this image. I like the thought that's gone into it. I like the sense of just getting all these different, getting that those geometrical shapes in together and creating that sort of semi-abstract kind of look, where you look at it and you think you know what you're looking at, and then you're not totally sure, so you look at it again. Yeah, I really like it, Susan. It's a nice one, that. So yeah, Smug Points there. Well, of course, we will be. Everybody who's entered a picture in today gets a minimum of 10 Smug Points. So, and then if you're part of my selection later, you get extra Smug Points. But you get 10 for submitting something for a challenge. You also get 5 for saying hello and leaving a comment. So if you happen to be watching and lurking but haven't said hello yet, leave a comment and let me know you're here to ensure you get your 5 Smug Points added to the accumulator. Right, so where are we? Oh, April says, I can see this being better in black and white versus the colour as well. Okay, excellent. So, excuse me. Next up then, we are going to go to Sandra. Now, where did Sandra put... Ah, right, now, Sandra's gone for a wedding rings one. Now, 3 weeks ago, you know, I did a very quick shot of a ring in a book, just to show you the kind of idea. Sandra's taken this and really done it properly. You know, mine was just a very quick snap just to give you an idea. But also what Sandra's done is she's gone beyond her own wedding ring, and she's also, so she's got 2 wedding rings in here. She says, I attach a photo of mine and Kevin's wedding rings. It's a bit of a cliche shot, but it's one where the 2 rings create hard shadows. I'm fortunate to have a church service book at home, so I thought it would be nice to have a still life of our 2 wedding rings, placed on a marriage service page. It turned out to be much harder than expected. Okay, before we get into that, but yes, this is what I really like this idea, Sandra. I like the idea that you've thought it through. It's not just wedding rings in a book, which is pretty much all I did, with a quick shadow. But you've thought about, this is a wedding service. It's got the marriage. We can zoom in. We can read a bit about the bride and bridegroom stand before the priest. The vows you are about to take. The priest says to the bridegroom, will you take your wife? He answers, I will. She answers, I will. So there's a whole narrative within this. It's not, there's a visual, even if you can't read the text, even if this text was written in gobbledygook, or some language you didn't understand, it wouldn't really matter. Well, I mean, in that sense that you would then have what is, in essence, the bit with the shadows, which is about creating these beautiful heart shapes in the way the page turns, coming out of round wedding rings. But it creates an added extra level by having this as a background. So it's a really thought through narrative, and I think that's really good. However, she goes on to say, it wasn't as easy. It turned out to be much harder than I expected. Firstly, the marriage service was in the first quarter of the book, so they needed to be weighted down to stop them moving and covering the rings. Of course, that's the problem. Yes, if you are opening a book in the middle, then you've got an even weight on either side. But if the book is only a quarter open, then the 3/4 side is going to be starting to pull. So yeah, so you're going to have to find weights on either side. Second, Kevin's wedding ring needed to be blue tacked in place. Okay, so it wasn't going to just sort of sit there and stay there. It had to kind of be just stuck in place with a little bit of tack. But those were the easy bits. Getting the lighting right was hard. I placed a light box behind the rings, but the harsh shadows were very faint. So that's coming back to this notion of the soft box would have been a larger light source than the ring. So the larger the light source means that the shadows would become softer. So you would have needed a harder, more directional light to create it, which she then eventually worked out. After trying 2 light boxes at different intensity, I decided to try a torch, which gave me a more directed beam of light and the darker shadows I was after. I had to remove the blue tack in Photoshop and straighten up the book to account for the different number of pages on either side of the rings. I decided to convert to black and white because the rings are different colours. Well, that's true, you wouldn't notice that, we wouldn't know that from here. So yeah, a lot of work's gone into this. It's not as straightforward. It's got that kind of look of a simple thing to do, but actually a lot more work to make it look that simple, which is the sign of what we do as photographers. Other people go, oh, that looks easy, but actually it isn't. It takes so I really appreciate you going to the work and letting me know what went into creating that. I think it's an important aspect of what we're sharing here in Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, is that when we are showing our pictures, when we kind of give a little bit of talk about what's going on behind the scenes, that is also an insight then for any of the rest of us. So it helps us know that if we were going to try something, what kind of difficulties we might be up against. Okay, I've flipped over to the comments. There don't seem to be any more comments, which surprises me, because generally speaking they are. So it might be that the comments are frozen on here, or it might just be everybody's decided to give up commenting. I don't know. The problem is, you see, if I ask one of you to leave me a comment, but it's not accepting the comments, then I'm not going to know. So, April says, yes, we do. Right, the last comment I've got here is, oh no, right, I do have comments. They have suddenly appeared. April says, I see this photo being better. Oh, right, that was the previous one. Okay, a double heart, cool. That's right. Susan says, well thought out, Sandra, loving the double hearts. April says, I'd be curious to see this in colour, but it looks very good in black and white. Okay, a couple of people have shoved in test comments for me. Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, I am getting the comments. Right, okay, that's right. I must have just kind of paused for a bit on here. Okay, so where are we now? So next up then, we will go to Nadia. And Nadia has sent in this one. It says, this is my entry for the shadow challenge. While I was on a walk a while back, I spotted these leaves on a bench. And again, like John, it's an observational one, and I like that. This is this idea that you're out for a walk, you see something grabs your attention, and so now you kind of go in and you move around. And that strong sunlight coming down onto the brown leaves, onto the old kind of the brown wooden bench, looks like it's chipping off the paint. It's sort of aged, it's weathered. Lovely texture on the leaves as well. It's sort of quite leathery, kind of almost, very leathery kind of texture on this kind of brown leaf here. So lovely texture, but yes, really strong kind of shadow here as well, creating interesting lines. So nicely observed there, Nadia. Thanks very much for sending that one in. Oh, April says the stem shadow is nice. Right, okay. Robert says, good idea, maybe not zoom so close. Yeah, I mean, there is another bit which kind of depends on whereabouts you want to, how much of the whole picture you want to see, whether you're wanting extra bits or, more of the background, less of the background. So you kind of work that one out, depending on what else happens to be there. I mean, sometimes you end up zooming in close because there's other objects that you don't really want to have in there. Susan says, really like the contrasting textures, Nadia. Okay, next up then we have Janet. There's Janet. Oh, this is a fun wee one. Just zoom that in a little bit. Janet says, this is a little figure I've had for years and used to create a shadow. I was using a flashlight to light it. I tried to find a larger light to use but didn't find anything in time. But actually you didn't need a larger light. This is to go back to exactly what we were talking about with the problems that both Susan and Sandra were up against when they on their first attempts. Was actually, if you have too big a light, you wouldn't have ended up with such a strong shadow. So having a small flashlight is exactly what you needed for something like this. So yeah, it's a fun little made out of nuts and bolts, looking like, is that figure sitting on a toilet reading a book? Right, is it a toilet or is it just a chair? Is it the round bit there? Looks like that. Possible open to interpretations, but I think it's a fun wee figure. But yes, it's rather nice to get that shadow. And what I like about the fact here that you've done is you've kind of obviously moved backwards and forwards with the torch to get the composition. So we get, for example, I mean, looking at this bit, we can see that there's a little gap in there, but it's not quite so obvious. However, the shadow shows us much more that there is a gap in the back part that's made out of a washer rather than just a flat disc. But likewise, you've still managed to retain some of the round hole of the head there as well. So we've got the complete shape here without it being blocked out completely, but there's a little bit of overlap. I think it's quite a nice composition. That so yeah, well thought through there, I think, Janet. So we've all got these funny little objects kicking around our house. Shine a torch at them and play around with left or right. And forward or back as the size of the shadow. The closer you move towards it, the smaller the shadow is going to get. The larger, further you move back, the larger the shadow is going to get as well. So usually. So yes, thank you for sending that one in. Janet says it is a toilet, right? Meg says, incredible, that's amazing. Robert says he was thinking it was a toilet himself. Nadia says, thank you, everyone. Robert, the surrounding area was quite messy, hence the zoomed-in image. Susan says, that made me laugh, Janet, well taken. And Robert Schaefer says, Nadia, I understand clutter well. Okay, cool. Right, next up, we're going to go to Robert Schaefer in Texas. And he sent in this one. I must admit, I was wondering whether anybody was going to do essentially a selfie shadow. And Robert duly obliged. Robert said, here's my shadow's image for this week's podcast. It's been so rainy here in Dallas over the last few weeks that I really haven't been able to go out and take some pictures. This one was taken in January, so it's not that old. The story. We were on a New Year's Eve cruise out of New Orleans with some friends of mine from college. We took an excursion to the beach where the water was too cold to get in. I wanted a selfie picture of my shadow with the surf, so this is it. I took it with my cell phone. Do I still get Smug Points? I really did want a picture of my shadow. Well, if it, as long as it wasn't an accidental one, then sure, yes. Well, so, but I mean, we've all done the kind of taking a shot of our shadow or sort of being curious about it. But what's quite nice here is that Robert has actually made sure that he's just reached a point whereby the water has come in and there's a crossover. So it's not completely on the sand, it's not completely on the water. He's got this line coming through, and actually this even tends to look a little bit like a face. You've got the forehead coming around, nose, mouth, lips, chin. So a kind of face within a face almost. But then again, we've got a whole chunk of our brain that is dedicated to seeing faces even when they're not there. But so yes, so selfie of shadow could practically have entered this one into the selfie challenge of last month. So nice one there, Robert. Thanks for sending that one in. Where are we? So John says, I like the figurine shadow. Robert say, I aim to please. Susan says, it's just me, or I do who sees a face in the phone. All right, yeah, must have written that just as I was starting to talk about it. April says, nice, there is a face in the water. Robert, actually, who took the photo, said, I did not notice the face before. And other Robert says, looks like the beard on your face too. Well, on my face or Robert's face? Presumably on Robert's face. I don't know. Did you enter the... Can't remember if you had a beard with the selfie contest. Can't remember what you looked like. Anyway, never mind. Right, okay, let's move on then to other Robert in Texas. And now our Robert, our first Robert, says sent in this one, which is rather intriguing, which I rather like. So we've got a skateboard in midair, and then we've got the shadow of the skateboarder. So presumably then at this point he's doing a leap. In fact, I know he is doing a leap because Robert has in fact sent me the raw image. But this isn't a feedback session this week. This is about displaying the images, and I think this is a very nicely done photo. To be able to, first of all, it's not easy to get that kind of capture where you do in fact have the skateboard in midair. And nice gap between the skateboard and the shadow. And interestingly, because of the angle of the light, the way that the skateboarder is above here, that actually the shadow of the skateboarder still places him on the skateboard to an extent. You're not getting the separation between the skateboard and the shadow of the skater. But it's a really nice action dynamic shot. Interestingly, when I first saw this, I thought it was in black and white. Then I noticed, actually, no, it is in colour. It's just because it's a grey tarmac and it's black shadows. And I think Robert has also changed and played with the contrast a little bit. That we've kind of lost any places where the only place you can find colour is, in essence, just on the edge of the skateboard at this here. What I might have suggested at this point, to be honest, is why not actually just go full black and white? Perhaps the colour here becomes a fraction of a distraction. I think maybe just going, given the fact that you've only got that little bit of colour, you may as well go black and white with the rest of it. But I really like the dynamism of this. I also know it's not easy to kind of capture. I don't know whether you were shooting at high speed, 20 frames a second as the guy goes. One of them hopefully works. I think you shot this at something like 2,000th of a second, but it was a really good good idea. Whatever system you used, it worked, because I think this works well. I like that idea of that skateboard hovering in midair and the shadow of the jump of the border underneath. So nice one there, Robert. A good, a great entry. Susan says, brilliantly done, Robert. April says, great catch. John says, the shot of skateboard is great, well done. Andy says, that's awesome. Other Robert says, great shot, Robert. And Robert says, thank you all. I thought about black and white, but thought the colour might give it a little bit more depth to the photo. I think if the colour had been brighter, maybe if it had been red or blue or something like that, might have added something. But then, having said that, if you'd had a kind of colour, it would have started looking a bit like selective colour, in which case your eye gets drawn to the colour and actually gets drawn away from the shadow. And I think maybe that's part of where I'm thinking about this, is where I tend to feel that the colour line is kind of a distraction, because when everything else seems black and white, it is like selective colour. It's like a little pop of colour, and so your eye gets drawn to the colour. And the strength of that photo isn't actually about the edge of the skateboard. The strength of that photo is the combination of the skateboard, the gap, and the shadow underneath. And so you don't really want to have anything distracting too much from that. And Nadia says, great shot, Robert. Okay. Next up then, we are going to go to April. Oh, well, Robert says, we're all tired of selective colour. Good point. Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. Selective colour, I remember when it first came out, when suddenly in Photoshop it was really easy to make everything black and white except make a little red rose that somebody was holding pop. It was great. And then suddenly everybody's doing it. And then wedding photos, you can't get a wedding photo album anywhere without everything being in black and white, but a red rose or something like that being there. And then everybody started doing it terribly badly. Making a single colour out of some aspect of the photo that was completely irrelevant. And I think it's a little bit, well, it's like so many things, you know, that once something becomes popular and then done badly, it kind of ruins it for everybody else. Okay, so where were we? So yes, let's move on to April then. And April sent in this one, and this is beautifully absurd. I really like this. So we've got the dragonfly here and the shadow of the dragonfly underneath. And April says this is a macro photo of a dragonfly and its shadow. The sun was very bright and the dragonfly was sunbathing. I thought it was amazing to get a full shadow cast, and it is lovely. You got that sense of the body here. What's really lovely, and this is where it becomes a slight shame that it wasn't on a wider leaf or something like that, is you also get the phenomenal detail of the dragonfly wings, also in shadow here, creating little texture. And the detail you managed to get with your macro shot, I mean, those wings are just phenomenal. I mean, it's one of those things like, you know, from childhood, dragonfly wings are just absolutely incredible, absolutely fascinating. So brilliant capture there, April. Nice use of getting the shadow there. Good use of diagonal as well. The way that you've captured that so that the leaf comes up at a really strong diagonal really kind of adds a level of dynamism. So although the dragonfly might be static, because of the strong diagonal of the leaf and the diagonal of the shadow, you kind of get the sense that it might have only just this second landed, or it might be just about to take off. There's a level of energy and dynamism to it. Whereas if it had been kind of flat on and done with more verticals and horizontal domination, then it would have felt more like it was just sort of sitting there sunbathing, not really doing much and not really going anywhere. But I like the energy of the diagonals in that. So very nicely caught there, April. Well done. John says, nice macro shot, April. Robert says, good catch with the shadow of the wings. Andy says, nice macro. Susan says, wow, April, great detail and lovely bokeh. Robert says, very nice, April. And April says, thank you, Kim and everyone. Nadia also says, great shot. Right, okay, so next up, Meg says, fantastic, April, a dragonfly, because I really like the diagonals. Okay, finally then we're going to come on to Viji, and then I'm going to tell you what's coming up in the next few weeks, so do stick around. Actually, just a quick reminder here that if you find these podcasts useful, interesting or entertaining and you would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. Always appreciated. Right, okay, so yes, final image then is Viji, and Viji sent in this one. And Viji says, for this week's photo challenge, I used the faux net that is used to cover fruit. The patterns were interesting. I thought the shadow would be interesting as well. I cut one side of the net, wrapped it around the torch, used my mobile. So she's using the torch on her mobile phone. And the shadows, I guess, came out well. Do let me know what you think of the shot. I think this is lovely. I also really love the creativity. So She's found, you go to the supermarket, you buy your fruit. They sometimes come in various kinds of netting and what have you. This kind of foam netting, she's cut a bit out, created a kind of little cone dome, used the light of the torch on her phone to kind of shine through, and you get these fantastic patterns here. Nicely composed as well. This is the perfect kind of going for the sort of symmetrical thing where everything sort of sits in the middle. So we've got that lovely kind of orange colour here, sits in the centre, and then we've got all the lines and the shadows just trailing out from it. Really strong shadows kind of contest. And again, I think if you're talking about these, when you add something like Photo Crowd or Guru Shots or whatever, and there's a contest which comes up as shadows, something like this is going to do really well. It fits the brief, does everything you want it to. So very nicely done there, Viji. Thank you very much for sending that one in. Robert says, cool concept, Viji. April says, love the low shot, an abstract look. Andy says, nice shot, Viji. Susan says, really innovative, Viji. Love it. Meg says, that's Meg says, fine to April. John says, brilliant and creative, Viji. Meg says, I really like the curves in the pattern. Excuse me. So, okay, well, thank you there to everybody who sent in the images. And hopefully now that's kind of given everybody some ideas of what you can do. We've got a great cross section there, from selfie shadows to objects found in the house and use of torches, playing around with books and wedding rings, playing around with netting, creating abstracts with an egg and a corner of a table, changing the shadow so it looks like a knife instead of a pen, observational things like leaves, capturing Dragonfly, zigzags of shadows going down the steps, and a skateboard as well. So I love the way that everybody's kind of approached the challenge in a different way. We've come up with a bunch of different images, and hopefully it will be inspiring. Just, as Susan said earlier, she saw her idea in Photoshop, went away and did her own version of it. You too can go away and do your own version too. So be inspired by this. Always come back and take a look. And also don't forget to go back and check episode 191, 2 episodes back, for other ideas. If you're ever kind of thinking, well, what could I do with shadows? Or you look out, it's a strong, bright sunny day, or you suddenly find you've got a new torch for Christmas or flashlight or something, then immediately think about what you might do with that. Okay, so, so what am I going to do here for awarding points? Well, I think what we will do is, I think the top award for me is going to go to Susan for this. I think Susan's. I really like this one, and the more I look at it, I keep kind of finding myself coming back to this one. It's beautifully done. I really like that kind of those strong geometric shapes, making it kind of sort of semi-abstract kind of image. Thought has gone into it, playing around, precision, really chasing down what you wanted to get. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Okay, so Susan then gets the bonus 30 smug points for this. So congratulations, Susan, on that. Second place, I kind of struggled to get that one. So I've decided to do a joint second between Andy with this one, which again I just really love. Again, a lot of thought gone into this, playing around in Photoshop, a lot of thought gone into the editing as well, and it's fun, and also with Robert's one with the skateboard, I think it's a really well caught shot, and however many shots you took, this is the one that you decided to work with and create it. So I think a joint second. So both Robert and Andy will get 20 smug points for that. Then I think Viji's one, I just really like this. Again, a lot of thought gone into it, being creative. So I think Viji will get third place with an extra 10 smug points. But at the same time, I also do want to do a wee commendation here for Sandra, so an extra 5 smug points to Sandra here. Because although, as she says, it may be a relatively cliched shot, one that's been done, what I really like is the fact that the amount, again, it's the amount of thought and energy that's gone into this, that there's time spent, and I like the story. I mean, this is one of those things I sometimes say. People send me their images for challenges or feedback or whatever, and they just give me one line, and I say, tell me a little bit more about it. We're taking photos, but I'm as interested in the story behind the photos as I am in the photo as well. And and certainly anything where you're kind of overcoming problems, things that you ran up against, it's useful to be able to share that as well. So that, part of our little community here of photographers, it's not just a case of me sitting here at the front telling a classroom and you all having to make notes. It's interactive, it's sharing. All the experiences that you have, if you share them with me, I can share them with everybody else, and we all learn that little bit more from everybody. And I'm learning all the time as well. All these things, it's not, I would say if you really want to learn anything, teach it. You learn a lot more in the process. Okay, so thank you to everybody, and congratulations to those for the extra Smug Points. Several comments here from people saying congratulations to all, and well done for inspiring shots. Now, before you run off, next few weeks, let me just give you a quick run up, because at the end of the month, we're going to be missing another one, because I'm going to be in Spring Fling. So let me first of all, what we're going to do is next week on the 12th, excuse me, on the 12th of May, is going to be a feedback session. So if you would like feedback, critique on an image, send it in. This is one of the very few places on the internet where you can get genuine feedback. There's all sorts of places, and quite a few of you in the camera clubs will know this, that there are places that you're encouraged to go to. Well, there's photographic shows and what have you, where you go, where you can go and get a portfolio, or you can go and get an image critiqued by a professional photographer, but it costs you a chunk of money. This isn't costing you anything. So make the most of it. We learn so much. Every photo we take, we are always slightly limited by only seeing it through our own eyes. And the number of times we miss something out, we don't notice something which may be glaringly obvious to somebody else. Getting feedback on your photos is one of the best ways to improve your photography. So make sure you make the most of it. Send me your image, put it into the Facebook group, Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, or email it to me, kim@kimayres.co.uk. So there'll be space for a few of those next week. Also, though, next week, I'm going to talk about the notion of an observational exercise. This is something that I've started doing, and basically what I've done is I've set up reactivated essentially an old Instagram account that isn't my main Instagram account, it's a side one, but I'm using it to put up images when I go out for a walk and I notice anything, and I just take something on my phone. Now, I'm going to go into more detail about this, because since I've started, I've only been doing this for about a week or so, but I see it as a really, really useful way of honing the way you look at your surroundings. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about that next week. So do tune in for that, where I'll be kind of encouraging people to sort of maybe do something similar themselves. But I'll give you all sorts of kind of feedback and ideas on that. Okay, so that's next week. So make sure you tune in for that. Now, in 3 weeks' time, like I say, I won't be here for that, because there is Spring Fling. So regulars who've been here for the last couple of years will know that at the last weekend in May, there's an event called Spring Fling in southwest Scotland, and it's an open studios event. So essentially, for the 3 days, for the Saturday, Sunday, the Monday, last weekend in May, we open our studios. Public can come and visit us, and I've got a studio space that some friends have lent me, an outbuilding of theirs. I will have the studio open for visitors. If you live in or around southwest Scotland, or you're planning on coming up this direction anytime at the end of May, do come along and visit. I will give you more information about that in the next couple of weeks, but you can also keep an eye on my own social media posts for that. But I'm going to be having prints of my images done up on the walls to come and take a look at. I'll also be doing photography demonstrations. All that, though, does mean that I won't be here for the podcast on that week. So that's in 3 weeks' time. So what I thought we would do is we'd have a challenge in 2 weeks' time to then, or I'd set the challenge in 2 weeks' time for when we come back. So in 2 weeks' time, the challenge being set is coming from Andy. Like I say, Andy won the Smug Points for April, and so Andy has decided that what he wants to do is set a portraits challenge. He's interested in the idea of we did self-portraits a few weeks ago, and that was terrifying for most people, but this time it's portraits, so it's taking a photo of somebody else. Now for some of you that's equally as terrifying, but it's something I want to talk about. The thing is with portraits is I could do an entire podcast every week on portraits because there's something different, but in essence, it's about the idea of the fact that a portrait needs to tell us something about the person. It's not like a passport photo where it's purely about a physical likeness and you don't care who the person is, what they're thinking, or anything about them. It's just, do we have a physical likeness so we can identify that person? That's what that's what a passport photo is about, or an ID photo of some kind. A portrait is the idea that it's telling us something. Now, what it might be telling us, whether it's mood, feeling, personality, or events or things that have happened to them, or the hobbies, or anything else, that's the kind of thing that becomes interesting. So I'm going to talk more in depth about that then in 2 weeks' time. So on the 19th, I'm going to be exploring the notion of portrait, and then I will be setting a challenge so that when we come back on the 2nd of June, I think, hopefully you will send me in your portrait images and we'll then take a look at that. So if that idea absolutely horrifies you, blame Andy. But I desperately encourage you to make sure you watch what I'm talking about and do your best to take part. Try and find somebody to take a photo of, whether it's your grandchild, whether it's a neighbour, whoever it is. But it's a genre I know most of you tend to avoid, but it really is one that can be so richly rewarding in terms of narrative and developing your photography. So that's what we're going to be dealing with over the next few weeks. Right, okay, so April says it is my least favourite genre to photo, but I will try. That's the spirit, April. Excellent. Oh, and Susan says me too. Oh, Viji has joined us at the end. It says portrait photography is always challenging. Yes, it is. Glad you just managed to sneak in at the back there, Viji. Actually, a couple of other comments there as well. So you have been here for a few minutes. Right. Okay. So that's us. Thank you ever so much to everybody who's submitted images, to everybody who's left a comment, and don't forget, next week then send me your images for feedback, and I will also talk to you about this notion of an observational exercise, which I think could be a really good way of just including into the sort of rhythm of your week to improve your photography. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye bye.